From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. This is part 2 of our great conversation with fourth-year dental student from Ohio State, soon-to-be Dr. J.D. Foles. If you have not listened to part 1, I would ask you to stop the tape and go back to the previous episode and listen to part 1. By doing that, part 2 will make more sense. In this part 2 version, we really start to unpack leadership principles, really start to unpack what it takes for a young doctor to not only be a great clinician, but to be the communicator and the leader that his team needs him to be the most successful business owner that he or she can be. So hope you find value in the conversation. I really enjoyed talking to JD. He's going to move on to do great things, as I know many of you are. So thanks for listening. As always, reach out. You can contact me via my cell phone number or email, all listed on thedentallighthouse.com, and talk to you soon.
It sounds like we have kind of a similar philosophy towards, leadership and how you go about that. So then to me, my question becomes, let's say you and I have similar definitions and we're kind of going after similar things. One is, how do you get better at that? Because you can't really, as you already said, it's tough to go to a weekend course like you can with extractions. I can go do an extraction course on Monday morning. I will be better. I don't know if you can say the same about leadership. Maybe a little bit, but it's a much softer skill. Like, I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. Do you have, where do you feel like that really truly develops?
Yeah, great question. So your analogy with the extraction course could be true and could not be true, right? If you're sitting in a seminar and you're being lectured on how to do better extractions, I would argue that you're not necessarily better Monday morning. Like, you have the information to be better, but until you start to act on it, you're not going to be better. Now, if you're going to a Dr. Aaron's course and you're actually doing extractions all weekend, then 100% you'll be better Monday morning. So I think the same holds true with leadership. And I talk about this all the time in my servant leadership class. I'm giving you the information. Like, don't just feel good about consuming the information, because that's not going to make you a better leader. Just like reading a book on golf isn't going to make you a better golfer. Listening to classical music on Spotify is not going to make you a better piano player. Watching Michael Phelps on TV at the Olympics isn't going to make you a better swimmer. You actually have to do it. You have to flex that leadership muscle. So I can give people like you, operations people, team leads, the content, the what to do, but then you actually have to develop the character to do it. You have to act. And I use the analogy all the time of, again, like playing the piano, right? If I can teach you how to play the piano, that's one thing, but you actually need to start practicing. And the first time you play the piano, if you've never done it before, it's going to sound horrible. It's going to be awkward. You're going to be sore. But if you can consistently do it, do a little bit more the next day, a little bit more the next day, all of a sudden you can play, a few riffs. Same thing with leadership. Once you have one uncomfortable conversation, then, okay, it was awkward. It was weird. I didn't maintain eye contact, but I did it. And then the next day, I'm going to do a little bit more. And the next day, I'm going to do a little bit more. And next thing you know, you start to see the benefits of being honest with people, being kind with people, about being patient with people. And you're like, okay, this is really working. This is benefiting my team. They're growing. They're getting better. They're getting more engaged. And it just motivates you to want to do it more and more and more.
For sure. Yeah, I love that. And I think I've got all kinds of quotes that I might throw out, but it's like, knowledge isn't power, execution is power. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk to you about this, because I feel like, people listen to podcasts and they go to the summits and stuff and they get all of this information that's awesome. And then it doesn't always, hit the road. It doesn't always translate to what they're doing. So if you're a D4 out there listening, what is something that they can do to flex their leadership muscle? Because it's easy for you, maybe not easy, but you have a lot of at bats for leadership when you have a team of 100 plus people. If I'm a D4 and I don't even have an assistant when I'm doing my work, where's an opportunity for someone like me or even a young doc out there, maybe as an associate to flex that muscle?
Yeah. So James Clear in his book Atomic Habits talks about the 2-minute rule, right? And if you're trying to develop the habit of running, you don't necessarily and you have no history of running, you don't go out and run a 5K your first day. Like, you follow the 2-minute rule. You just simply put on your shoes, your running shoes, and you walk to the corner and back. And then that's a win. You are casting a vote for who you're trying to become, a runner. If you're trying to become a reader, you don't set this expectation of, okay, I'm going to read a book a week. You set the expectation of, okay, I'm going to read a page a day. And you set yourself up, you set your environment up in a way where, okay, I'm going to put the book on my bed. And right before I go to bed, I'm going to read this page. And that's casting a vote for me to become a reader. So that's the 2-minute rule. So you start there. You start with these little situations. Now, for a D4, it could be someone that you're working side by side with. It could be having a conversation based in honesty. It could be a conversation based in patience. It could be a conversation based in kindness. It could be a situation, and you've probably heard me talk about stimulus gap response. And I don't know if your dental school's set up anything like mine, but when I would have to go get certain instruments at a window, right, and they wouldn't have the instruments that I need, or I'd have to wait, like, that's the stimulus. And then I would not sit in the gap long enough. And my response would be, what the fuck? Like, I told you I needed these instruments. Like, that's not a servant leader. That's not flexing good leadership muscle. So if I had to give any advice to my old self as a 4th-year dental student, or to you, it would be, okay, you cannot control the stimulus, but you can sit in the gap and you can decide the best way to respond. And if the best way to respond in the situation that I just unpacked is to show patience and to show empathy and to show curiosity on how we can get through this, then that's what you should do, versus kind of losing your cool and losing your patience. So those are some of the tools that I teach, some of the behaviors that I teach, those 8 principles of agape love. I just want it to be very black and white. Now, once you are into this practice in Texas, you're going to be dealing with dental assistants and hygienists, and there's going to be ample opportunities for you to coach them up if they're not meeting the expectation. Again, assuming that the expectation has been laid out clearly. For example, if you have a dental assistant that's not making temporary crowns that are well-fitting and done in a timely manner, you have 2 choices. You can ignore it and you can be like, well, that's the best she can do. Or you can have an honest conversation with her and say, hey, it would be awesome if we could get these temporary crowns to fit a certain way and to have clinical contours that are ideal in 15 minutes or less. I'd love to train you or help you get to that point. Is that something that you're open to? And if it's a good core value fit, she'd be like, hell yeah, I thought my temporary crowns were great. No one's ever said anything to me. So now you're being honest with them and you're helping them grow. You're training them up to meet a different standard or a different expectation.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And that's honestly one of the things I've been working on recently is not sitting in the gap too long, because I think for a while, my thing was just the don't lose your cool part. Not that I'm like a hothead or anything, but just in that moment, it can be frustrating, right? The human reaction. And for a while, I think I was too passive, and it was kind of just, okay, just don't have any reaction. But what I've been trying to work on, and let me know what you think of this, is being able to have those difficult conversations and really learning how to navigate it. Like, if they didn't have the instruments and it's something that's maybe not just happened once, but maybe it's been a couple times, being able to quickly, not sit in the gap for too long and have that candid conversation with, the lady who works there. And maybe it's not even her job to stock that equipment. And, there's no point in getting mad at her. Like, that doesn't help anything. But just starting to have those difficult conversations, because I feel like that has been very challenging for me. I think it's just a hard thing in general, but it's something that I've been working on. And I feel like I've been seeing results, and I'm really glad that I've been working on it. So I don't know what you think of that, but I think I would encourage anyone else out there to start, having difficult conversations and not just letting things happen and saying, "Oh, I didn't say anything and I didn't lose my cool, therefore I did good." Like that's not a leader.
100%, right? So one of the behaviors of agape love, of servant leadership is honesty. And we define honesty as telling the truth and being free from deceit. So if you conveniently leave things out, then you're not being honest with people, right? And I actually just did a podcast for Paul Goodman, um, for his thing that's coming up, the Super Boost Nachos thing.
Yeah.
And I created this fictitious example of, okay, you're walking down the hallway and you see an assistant and hygienist in the corner kind of gossiping, right? Like if you choose not to say anything, then you're not being the leader that the office and the team needs. Like even though you don't want to, it's part of your character development. So the way that we define character development is knowing what needs to be done and then actually doing it, even when you don't want to. So you don't want to go into the corner and have a conversation with the hygienist and the assistant that gossiping isn't what we're all about.
Yeah.
But life is not a moral dilemma. You know you need to do that, and you're developing your leadership muscle. You're developing your character if you go do that. So I know you don't have total control as a D4, but to the situation you just unpacked is a great one. So if your instruments aren't ready, if they're not available, like instead of just being passive and being meek, you would kind of try to figure out, well, how can I help this situation? Like, do I need to talk to do I need to talk to your supervisor about a better system? And I could see that you're underwater. Like, I want to be able to help you. How can I best help you be successful the next time? So again, your hands are somewhat tied as a D4, but as soon as you become an associate, there's going to be ample opportunities for you to be, and your boss is going to want that. Again, because what we unpacked 15, 20 minutes ago, like it's going to be impossible for just the owner to micromanage everything. So we talk about peer-to-peer accountability in our organization. So everyone's a leader, everyone's creating influence. It's, do you have the courage to, even though you're not a described leader, do you have the courage to have a peer-to-peer accountability conversation with people and be like, hey, this is not, what the standard is. This is not what we agreed to. Let's talk about how we can get it to where we need it to go.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. I love that. I think it's something that a lot of us, I'm sure you're still working on that. And I'm sure that that's would you say that's one of the hardest things you've had to learn as a leader? Or is that something that kind of came to you
Oh yeah.
naturally?
No, nothing comes naturally. It just comes again, like playing the piano. It just comes through like repetition. And the first couple of times I had peer-to-peer accountability conversations, they were awkward. It was like a train wreck, right? But I got better at it and I saw the benefits of it. And then it's just been great to like do them myself. Like we talked about, I think before we hit record, about fitness, like modeling behavior for the people around us, right? So people see me having these peer-to-peer accountability conversations because I want to grow people. And then after a certain period of time, other individuals will start to have peer-to-peer accountability conversations with others. Because again, the ultimate goal is to just grow people, to like have A and B players that are consistently getting better. And if we have these conversations and people are not growing, it's a them issue, right? It's like, okay, we're doing everything we can possibly do to grow you. You're not being receptive to it. And that's when we start to talk about weeding your garden or go into a whole different rubric on how to really try to get the best out of somebody.
Yeah. So that was another thing that if we're kind of transitioning a little bit here, how do you feel like you're able to do that without creating too much of a founder effect? You were talking to some young docs on your pod a few weeks ago, I think. Some guys that were from like Texas, I think, or they went to school in Texas. And, you guys talked about the founder effect a little bit. And I feel like one of the things that I'm aware of is that I definitely have the personality that will create a founder effect. But I know my goals don't necessarily align with that because at a certain scale, as we've talked about, you can't be everywhere. So how do you feel like you are able to communicate this stuff to others in your group, your other leaders, so that you're able to avoid creating too much of a founder effect and creating avoid when you're not there?
Yeah, great question. So it's the communication of the expectations, right? So like those rules of the house that we talk about, those 20 people that I have as leaders in the organization, making sure that I over communicate. Lencioni will call it the chief reminding officer, making sure that I over communicate exactly what I expect, right? And again, so we use the term rules of the house. And you could even use it from an objective perspective, like a revenue, profitability, budgetary perspective. Just being crystal clear with what you expect as the founder, as the leader. And they have a choice. Your leaders can be like, okay, I get it, and I agree with it, or I don't. And if they don't, then you have to kind of work that through. But assuming they get it and they want to be in the seat, now all you have to do is train them up on how to have these conversations with the people that report to them. And again, that's a very abbreviated description of how to do it. And it's taken me years to kind of figure that out. But we're at the point now where I intentionally try to not be present for a lot of these conversations, because when I am present, to your point, people will default to me. They'll be like, well, what does
Yep.
Jason think?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I don't want that. So
Yep.
I, it was an ego thing. So I was like, well, I want to be at that meeting so I can make sure that it's being done correctly. Well, the reality is I was causing more harm than good by being present and basically cutting off my leaders at the knees, because everyone would look to Jason. What's Jason think? What's Jason want to do? What's his opinion on this? So over the last couple of years, I've intentionally tried to pull away, and I really only talk to a handful of people in my organization anymore. Not because I'm trying to be antisocial, but because I'm
No.
trying to give them the autonomy and the ability to grow into their own leadership. And I can manage them based on the expectations that I've set and allow them to be successful with their teams.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I feel like that's such a powerful message to like identify your ego, know that that's what it is, and then get out of the way and say, I want others to be successful. Because I feel like a lot of, as dentists, we're trained to be the leader and we're trained to be that guy or girl in the room. You're the boss. And I feel like it's unnatural for us because clinically the buck stops with you. And for a lot of other things, we're trying to basically flip that coin and do it a different way. So I feel like my question then would be, how do you identify, at what point do you start to realize that someone is independent enough to start running a meeting like that? I'm assuming it's something gradual where it's kind of like small responsibility here, see how you handle that, sequentially get bigger, and then eventually they're running their own meeting, something like that.
Yeah, 100%. So as soon as someone expresses interest in a leadership position, or we identify a level of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, communication style, where we think they could be a leader, first we'll approach them and ask them if they're interested in our leadership track. Some people are, some people aren't. I totally respect people that are not, because it's an awesome responsibility. It's a lot of work to have a team of 6, 7, 8 people depend on you, right? Like you're the reason that they're going to grow or not, just the way that we're built. So if we start to see those signs or someone expresses interest, we'll start to put them through our leadership track. I have a number of leadership modules that I would share with them. And then it's a lot of like hand holding, a lot of one-on-one training where, for example, I was the hygiene lead in our organization for a long time, and then found somebody that I knew could do it. And they understood what was needed by watching me act out specific behaviors, right? So they would sit in at meetings that I was running. They would see how I communicated to people. So when they came to me interested in the position, they knew how they needed to behave because I was modeling that behavior for them. So when you have employees that are part of the organization and they already have a lead that's doing things the right way, it helps create clarity in their own mind. Okay, if this is what leadership is like in this organization, I want to be a part of it. I want to be in the seat that she's in. And that's how it's unfolded in our organization.
So you have like a specific track that you've created for your leaders?
Yes.
Is it kind of a general track, or is it tiered? Like, I'm assuming there are at least one or two tiers, in your leadership in like your org chart. Is it different for different tiers? Is it different for different positions? How individualized is that?
It's a little bit of both. So some of the principles are the same. For example, making sure that the rules of the house are crystal clear, core values, purpose, vision, stuff like that. Like that's the same no matter what level of leadership you're at. And then as you're as you become a leader higher up in the organization, the priorities become a little bit different. But for the most part, the principles are the same. They're the servant leadership principles of agape love. They're knowing how to behave, knowing how to have conversations, knowing how to develop your character, making sure that they understand the value of over communicating to people, giving them feedback. The worst thing that you can possibly do is have a leader or quote unquote leader that's in a position that's not having constant conversations with people on their team. Because, and in my opinion, I truly believe that people are inherently good and all errors are simply errors in understanding or errors in communication. So if someone's not doing a good job, again, assuming they're a good person, they're not doing a good job because they have a leader that hasn't been crystal clear on what a good job is. And that's unfair to have a leader that's not going to have those conversations. That's why we're constantly preaching how much of an awesome responsibility leadership is. And if you don't want to do the hard work, then just let us know and we'll get you out of that seat because your team deserves better.
That's awesome. Do you think it would be something worthwhile for me to start? Like, I'm assuming you created that leadership track. I think you can tell after talking to me for, 50 minutes that that's kind of the direction I'm going. Is that something I should start developing? Like I've started putting together some stuff. Some of the pillars that like DSN talks about. I've started putting together, what's it, core values, goals for the practice. I have like a practice mission statement, all that stuff starting to kind of come together. Even if I'm joining another practice, just starting to think about these things like should I start working on a leadership presentation, a leadership track, or should I just steal yours and copy paste it and say thanks, Jason?
Well, the reality is that I've stolen all my ideas from other people and then you put your own spin on it, right? So I think even from a core values, like I didn't come up with the concept of core values. You didn't come up with the concept of core values. Like who did? It was probably Jim Collins and Good to Great, but he probably stole it from somebody too. But so I do agree that, coming up with the core principles of, why are you doing what you're doing? What value system do we have? How are we expected to behave? Having absolute clarity on that, I think at your point is really, really important. You'll be well ahead of the curve if you've already started to think about that. But after that, it gets to the point that we made a few minutes ago, getting rid of the ambiguity. Okay, it's one thing to teach an office manager, these are our core values and this is why we exist. But how is she supposed to handle a situation if someone comes in late for work 3 days, one particular week? Like she needs to have a framework of how to handle that conversation. And it's got to be a framework that you're on board with. It can't be a framework where she's yelling at that person, unless that's what you believe in, right? No judgment.
No, not particularly.
But it's got to be a framework. Okay, this person was late 3 times this week. Someone needs to go have an accountability conversation with them. Who's it going to be? That's the accountability chart. And what is the framework of that conversation? What does it look like? And what's the follow-up look like? So having clarity with what that is, that's our leadership track. Like, yeah, you can take bits and pieces of mine and kind of spin it and create your own, or you can develop your own, but it's not something that you like decide on a Sunday afternoon. Okay, I'm going to write this process out or the system out. It's developed over years of reading books, having experiences, talking to people on podcasts, listening to podcasts, and then you ultimately get to the point where you're like, okay, I think I figured it out. But even myself, like I think mine's pretty good. I'm constantly tweaking it. I'm constantly trying to be like, well, how can I be better this week? How could I be better this week? So you'll never like arrive. It's just a journey of like just getting a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better.
Yeah.
15 years ago when we started scaling, my leadership track was book clubs. It was like, okay, we're all going to read 5 dysfunctions of a team, or we're all going to read the survey, and then just having conversations with my leadership team about that. That's where it started. And that's a good place to start. And then it slowly but surely grows as you grow, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My thing, I'm a little impatient. I don't want to wait if I don't have to. I know that it will take refining, and I know I'll never arrive, but there's just so many good resources out there, guys like you, other guys doing great stuff. I just feel like I have no excuse to not be just ready to go day one. Cause just even having these, even if I just copy pasted yours, I feel like that's still setting me ahead of 90%, if not more, of other practices just by even starting it, whether or not I made it myself, just like using it. So I don't really know what my point is with that, but I would love to hear more about I'd love to talk a little bit more offline if you have a second about that, or even just if you'd be willing to send me a copy of kind of what you do, even just a larger framework, or specifically, I'd love to take a look at what you do with that. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I can totally send it to you. One of my favorite quotes is from Mike Tyson, the boxer, famous boxer. He was very popular when I was a teenager, and he
I'm
says
not
everyone's
that
got.
young. You're not that old. I know who Mike Tyson is.
He's had almost like a second career in movies and stuff. But back in the day when I was like 18, 19 years old, I mean, there was no one more fearful than Mike Tyson. He was just a machine, a man amongst boys. But one of his best quotes is everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And
Yep.
I agree with that to a certain extent. So, and again, I'm not saying this because I don't want to send you this information, but a lot of times I'll get requests from podcast listeners or from my own coaching clients. Hey, can you just send me this process, or can you just send me this document? And the mindset that they have is, once I have this document, all of my issues will go away. And I'm not suggesting that's what your mindset is. I'm saying that, okay, it's one thing, and you quoted this earlier so eloquently. It's one thing to have the information. It's another thing to actually implement it and make the right decisions in the moment. Again, character development. It's not life is not a moral dilemma. Leadership's not a moral dilemma. It's knowing what needs to be done and actually doing it. So I think it's a great start to create your own framework, or take my framework, or Mark's framework, or Summers' framework, or Addison's framework, and turn it into your own. That's part one. And then part two is actually when the rubber meets the road, following through with it. When that employee does show up late for the third time this week, okay, we have a system for this. Now we actually have to act on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. It's not just checking the box. It's not checking the box. I have it. Someone gave it to me and I'm good to go. It's just a starting point for me to start to digest it and make it my own and internalize it into, whatever group I'm a part of, whether it's someone else's group or my group at some point. So that 100% makes sense. And for what it's worth, whatever you thought I was quoting, I promise you I stole it from another podcast. I did not come up with that myself. I've probably heard it like 10 times somewhere else and just requoted them. So definitely I'm not that smart. Trust me. I think we're getting to the point, we're coming up on an hour, so I want to respect your time. There was one other thing that I did want to talk to you about, kind of a transition. Just this one's a little bit more personal, just something that I've been kind of working on. It relates to dentistry, but also just kind of everything in general. One of the things I've been working on right now is just really being more aware of my energy levels and kind of protecting my energy levels and utilizing the momentum that can be gained or lost. I feel like, especially when I go to something like the summit a couple weeks ago, you come home from that and you're supercharged for like a week. Or I'm sure I'm going to get off this call and I'm going to want to go run through a brick wall. You know what I mean? That's just how I am. But I feel like I need to do a better job of protecting my energy, because I'm a guy that gets tired pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
I'll work really hard, but I feel like I'm generally tired a lot. And I feel like in those moments when I'm tired, that's when stuff starts to really break down for me. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's when I'm, the bad leader, or I don't have the conversation I'm supposed to have, or I'm passive aggressive. And not that this is something that's really frequent, or I think that I'm all over the place, but it's just something that I'm really working to refine. I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on that, any advice on what I should be doing, if that's something you've been through, kind of unpacking that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we all have, energy is a finite commodity. It's not it's not an unlimited resource. You have to do specific things in your life to maximize your energy, outside of the obvious ones like, how you eat and how you recover. Um, Steve Jobs is famous for wearing, a black shirt and black pants every day. And the main reason he does that is because he tries to minimize the amount of decisions that he needs to make in any given day.
Hmm.
And I think little things like that also can maximize your energy because you're not leaking energy with making these decisions. I wear black athletic shorts and graphic t-shirts every single day. And it doesn't really
Oh.
matter if I'm me. Yeah, there you go. Right.
Ohio State College of Dentistry has chosen that one for me. So,
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm going to a bank interview to try to get a $1 million loan for a practice, or if I'm on a podcast, I'm wearing a graphic t-shirt and shorts. So I think doing everything you can to minimize energy leak is really important. And obviously eating right, exercising, recovering is really, really important. I also think that everyone's wired a little bit differently in terms of when their energy is at a maximum. So I'm at my best energy wise from the moment I wake up till about actually right now, 1 o'clock. So I do the things that I have to be most intense at, developing systems, deep work, typically from 5 a.m. to 11 or 12 o'clock. And then in the afternoon is when I traditionally will do things that are less energy consuming, like podcast interviews, things like that. So just having identity or having an identification on, okay, when am I at my best throughout the day? What behaviors do I need to exhibit to maximize my energy in terms of eating, maybe avoiding alcohol or certain things? And then just creating a system in your life where you're minimizing your decision fatigue, like the Steve Jobs example that we just gave. Those are just
yeah.
some tools that work for me. I think the other thing too is just managing your own expectations. So you had referenced the summit. Um, there's no possible way that you're going to be able to leave the summit and implement everything that you learned in the amount of time that you want. So the reason that you get disappointed with yourself is because you set an expectation that I'm going to have all of this done and processed and implemented within 2 weeks. So that's just not realistic, right? So as soon as you kind of reset the expectations and you spend maybe the first day or the plane ride back saying, okay, these are all the things that I learned. What's the most important thing that I could implement like this coming month? And you identify that. And then you identify the next thing and then the next thing. And you just remanage your expectations. So now all of a sudden you're happy with yourself and you're successful because you've clarified what's important and you've clarified a realistic timeline to implement that stuff. But things always take way longer to implement than you think. And early on in my career, because I wasn't able to do them in the short window of time that I originally gave myself as a goal, I would get pissed at myself and consider myself a failure. But the reality is, I just changed the expectations and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 45 days to do this. And you dedicate a little bit of time every day to do this. And next thing you know, you've done it in 30 days versus the original expectation was, I'm going to dedicate 4 hours a day and get this done in 2 weeks. Not possible. It's just not realistic, especially as you get older, you get into a relationship, you have kids, you have your own business. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm plenty single, so I got plenty of time to work. But um, I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Jason. It just, yeah. Do you feel like how did you figure out that it was that morning time frame for you that was best? Where did that come about?
It's trial and error. just, okay, I'm going to dedicate a 2 hour deep work block from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. to work on this all on X system, right? And after 2 hours, I'm like, wow, I was really productive. Versus if I did it, say, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'd get distracted. I was like, oh, I'm going to go grab a bite to eat. So you kind of figure out what periods of time are best for your. I even think that um, there's not surveys are not the right word, but I think there's like assessments that you can take to kind of
Yeah.
decide when your best level of energies are. But just for me, and it wasn't always in the morning. I didn't always wake up at 4:30. I used to be a little bit more of a night owl, and so it changed as I aged, as I had kids, as I had a relationship with my wife. So, but you just have to identify like the period of time that you're going to be most productive, and utilize that time. Don't waste that time. And then I've
Yeah.
always been a firm believer of, I forget exactly what the right verbiage is, but uh, the best time to do the hard thing or to eat the frog, they say, is first thing in the morning. I kind of set myself up where I'm like, okay, here are my big three or big four things that I need to accomplish today. Here's the one thing that I really don't want to do. I'm going to do that first and just get it out of the way when my energy levels are the best. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how when I can get that out of the way, the rest of the things just become easier.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think I really need to do a better job of that. Partially, I think it's because my schedule is largely dictated for me right now.
Right.
But I think I could definitely do a better job of that. And that's great to think about because I do feel like towards the end of the day, I can fall off. But I feel like a lot of the time too, it's just what I'm doing. Whether it's something that I really love to do, I'm always awake for that. Or, if I don't love it, I find myself becoming much more distracted. But that's not unique to me. That's literally every single person ever. So nothing unique
No
about
doubt.
that. But I appreciate all the advice, sir. In closing thoughts, as we've been discussing, I feel like if we had to pick those buckets, I would say based off the conversation I've had and all the conversations I have with other amazing doctors like yourself, for my personal journey, I feel like the second and the third bucket, really that third bucket, are the most important for me. Do you feel like that's a fair assessment? And that's where I should be putting most of my energy, or maybe not most, but like where I should be putting my energy is bucket number three.
Everybody's different, right? So, and everybody's going to have a different answer based on their own lived experience and their own journey. Obviously, the fact that you've been consuming content for so long means that your answer is going to be a little bit different than if I had another podcast with another D4 student in an hour,
Sure.
right? But just based
Sure.
on the little that I know of you and what you have suggested that your goals are, I don't ever think you can go wrong with enhancing your ability to communicate with others, with being crystal clear with expectations that you want to have in others, and with developing your leadership muscle. I think no matter what you decide to ultimately do long term, if it's the group practice that you're envisioning, or if you pivot and it's 120 operatory mega practice, like the leadership muscle, the over communication with clarity, it'll serve you in every facet of your business and your personal life. It'll serve you in your relationship with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends. It just really behooves you to develop the skill of being a good communicator.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, sir. I'm not a religious man, but I do know you're doing God's work. I can tell that much. So thank you for your time. Do you have anything for me, or it's been almost over an hour now, so I'll let you go.
No, I really appreciate it, JD. And I think this conversation will definitely bring value to other people in your position that are trying to figure out what's next for them. So I appreciate you making the time, and I really do appreciate the conversation.
Of course. Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen, JD Foles without a T.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.